Well, hey there, Valley Baptist Middle School family. I hope you're having a great Sunday morning, and I hope that you and your family have had time to sit down and watch Pastor Roger's sermon this morning. It was fantastic. It's from Acts 27, and it talks about the Apostle Paul being transported to Rome after he was arrested. And as a prisoner on this ship, this tremendous storm that they all faced, and how God, even though it got crazy, even though they wrecked, even though they didn't have food, they had to throw everything overboard, God still had a plan. He protected Paul, and he brought him and many of the other sailors through the storm. But there's a couple of things that I wanted to point out that I think particularly can be effective in our middle schoolers' lives, in your lives. And the way that he formulated this sermon, I thought was fantastic. He talked, where do storms come from first? And I think it's important that we that we reinforce those here, just to remind us that sometimes storms are just part of the circumstances of life. That's just the way it goes sometimes. This world is corrupt, it's evil, it is fallen, and because of that, we're going to face storms from time to time. The second way is storms are brought about by our own personal decisions. Sometimes we choose to do something, and what happens? We have to face the consequences. Even if we're forgiven, even if we make amends, our decisions, no matter how forgiven we are, no matter how much we're loved, there's still consequences for every decision that we face. And sometimes those decisions may follow us for a short period of time, but other times they may follow us for the rest of our lives. And then the third way is sometimes we are dragged into storms by others. And that is unfortunate, but that's the way things go. We have a group or pack mentality as humans, and we want to be part of a family. We want to impress our friends. We want to follow our friends, and sometimes we get caught up in their decision making. And even though it might not have been the decision we made, sometimes it brings us down, and we end up having to face storms because of other people's decisions. And what I want us to take from this message today is two things, really. Number one is this: how can we avoid as many storms as possible? Well, I say avoid. Sometimes, like we said, number one, storms are just part of the circumstance of life. But how can we do them as best of job we can to keep from running into storms? Well, two of those, our decisions and the decisions of others, can be helped by listening to godly advice. And that was one of Pastor Roger's points this morning, was it is important to listen to godly advice, because a lot of times we can get advice that help direct our decisions or help direct us away from bad decisions that we make. As you guys grow older, you're more than likely going to enter into a relationship. And sometimes it is important to listen to our parents, because you may like somebody that isn't the best influence, that isn't the best person or best match for you. And I see this all the time where parents go, hey, I just have doubts about this girl or guy or whoever it is that you're dating. And you're just like, oh, well, we're in love. Everything's going to be great. And I know that may sound silly now, but trust me, in a few years, you're going to be saying those exact things. And if we can listen to godly advice, then a lot of times from our parents, from our pastors, from our friends, people that we know that follow Christ really well, then it can be a benefit for us. And we can try to limit our mistakes that lead to the traumatic storms of life. And I think that listening to godly advice is something that we as students, as young people, because here's the deal. Right now and for the next few years, I was there not too long ago. We're going to look at our parents and go, man, they know nothing. They have no idea what it's like to live in this life. And then I heard a great, oh man, I just went blank on who said it. Some great, I don't know if he was even great, but there was a person that said something, and it sounded in me so fantastic and so wonderful that I'm going to say it here and use it here. I'm sorry, I can't remember who said it, but they said it was amazing how smart my parents got from the time I was 21 to the time I was 22. It was like, man, they just gained all of this knowledge. But the truth is that our perspective changes. And I remember thinking that same thing when I was, 22, 23. I go, when did my parents learn so much stuff? Like, they didn't know anything when I was 18, 16, 17, 18. And man, were they sure right about a bunch of that stuff that I thought I was right about. And so sometimes that godly advice is there, but we're just so consumed with ourselves that we don't pay attention and we don't listen to it. The next thing that I want to point out is I have two more points that I thought were so important from tonight's message. And the other one, and I think that this applies to everybody, but specifically to us in middle school, and that is this: following the crowd leads to storms. It is so easy at middle school age, in high school, as you guys grow older, in college, to want to gain the love, the adoration, the attention of those who are around us, the people we think are important, the people we think are popular. And a lot of times that can lead us astray, because as Pastor Roger said this morning, a lot of times the masses are wrong. They don't look at life the way we look at life. They're not coming from a Christian point of view, from someone who follows Christ and looks at God as our moral compass. They look at themselves as their moral compass. And a lot of times that can compromise our decisions and our desires and our ability to follow God. And thus it will lead us into more storms. And it is important that even at those times that we not seek what the masses say, but that we go to the most concentrated source of godly advice, and that is the Bible. And that we pick it up and we read it and we follow His Word and we're familiar with it. And that's why a daily devotion is so important, not just so much for your spiritual growth, but so that you can know the Word of God. And when you're faced with a decision, you can go, no, that doesn't follow what God says, and you can make the appropriate decision no matter what it is. But a lot of times we follow the crowd, even when we know it's wrong, because we want to be acknowledged, we want to be included, we want to be a part of that group. And the truth is, sometimes it's better not to be, because honestly, when it all hits the fan and everything goes bad, those people that you were following, guess what? They're not going to be there. Why? Because their moral compass is themselves. It's their selfish desires. And so if they can pass it off to you and to get that burden off of them and onto somebody else, they're going to do it. And a lot of times when we follow the crowd, we end up even more alone than we were before, or than we would have been if we would have acted right, because now the crowd has abandoned us because everybody is out for their best interest and not our best interest. And we a lot of times get left out on our own. And then the last thing that I want us to talk about from Pastor Roger's sermon this morning is the easy way in life is not always the best way. And I see this so much in our middle schoolers, in my life, in our kids' life. Sometimes we just want to cut corners. We want to take the easy way out, but it's not always the best way. I've watched it play out in my son Tyson's life, and I know I use him a lot in these messages, but it's because he's right in this point. This is exactly what most of you are going through. But I will see him take shortcuts on his homework, not show his work on math. And then he gets upset and he's like, why did I not get the grade for this? Why did I not do this? Well, you didn't show your work. You didn't write it down. And the other day, it was a perfect example. He and my wife were working on their math, and he kept getting the wrong answer, And my wonderful wife goes, well, where's your work? Let's see what happened and maybe you missed. He goes, I don't need to show work. I'm that smart. Come on, dude. We know. We know how smart you are. You are a very smart kid. He is a very smart kid. But sometimes you need to do what's right. You need to take the time and write out your math problems. Write out everything so that you can see so that you can see where you made your mistake. Because here's the deal, we're all going to make mistakes. And he's sitting there and he's frustrated and he's upset and everything's not working out. And so my wife goes, all right, let me show you. And then he started saying, I'm just stupid. I'm just an idiot. And he started just beating himself up. And my wife goes, no, let me show you how smart I am. And she goes, trust me, if you just do this, you'll see. And she forced him to write out his math problems and do it the right way. Not the easy way, but the right way. And write it out. And he wrote it all out. And guess what? He got the right answer. And so then the next one he went and he wrote it out. Well, he missed the answer. Well, now he goes back and he saw, oh, hey, I forgot to do this step, or I did this step wrong. And he solved it quicker and faster than the 15 minutes he spent before complaining and yelling and getting upset and being forced to write it out. But if he would have done it right the first time, taken the time, even though it wasn't the easy thing was just to look at it and just give his best guesstimate based off of the knowledge he knew. But when he sat down and wrote it out, and he took his time and he did it the right way, he was able to get the right answers. And more quickly, I think that's the way you say it, more quickly identified the mistakes that he made to solve the problems. And he ended up getting done faster than if he would have just done it the other way and given up hope. And it's the same way in life for us, guys. Take the time to do things right. Take time and spend it in the Word. Take time and focus on your walk with God. Live life the way that God lays out for us. Why does God lay out life for us? It seems difficult. It seems crazy because a lot of times we have to do things that we're not comfortable with. A lot of times we have to turn down that group that wants to go do something. But the truth is this. If we do it God's way, He has set it up to where it can be the best life for us. And yes, we're going to run into storms because, as I talked about earlier, and as Pastor Roger talked about, storms are part of the circumstances of life. All right? And we're going to face storms, but if we take the time and if we prepared and if we're ready, we will be better to weather the storms that life throws at us than if we just take shortcuts our whole life and do what's easy, do what feels right, and we move through. Because then we'll be caught off guard, much like the captain and the whole ship was that Paul was sailing on this time. But if they would have taken the time and done it right, stayed in port, they would have been much better. Even if another storm came up, they would have been in a much better place and better prepared for the storm that life was going to throw them. And then the final thought, I know I said that was the last thing, but the final thought is this, and I thought this was so profound, and I say it's profound, and it was profound when he said it, but it's always been profound, and it's something that we all know or should know. God is with us in the storms. Such a huge truth of life. God sees you. We may not see Him, but He sees you, and you are not alone. Guys, I've lived, I don't even know how old I am. I think I'm 37 now. I've lived 37 years on this planet, and 37 years of following God, well, probably minus 9, so about 28 years of following God. And I've learned a lot through that. And I've learned a lot through life. And one of the biggest truths that's been there, there has been a lot of times where I have turned from God, where I have ran from God, where I have done things that I should not have done. But I will tell you this, and it holds true no matter what. No matter how angry, no matter how frustrated, no matter how bad, no matter how far away from God I got, whenever I reached that point where I was like, man, I need help. I need God. I need something. When I turned around, He was right there waiting for me with open arms. Guys, you can run as far away from God as you want. You can run 1,000 miles from Him. You can get as deep as you can. You can dig the deepest hole on the planet and get down in the very bottom. You can get in the darkest of places out there. You can get wherever you want, wherever you think you need to be. You can get there to the bottom and hide from God. But here's the deal. The moment you say, man, God, I need you, guess what? You don't have to cover 1,000 miles. You don't have to climb out of that deep hole. You don't have to crawl out of that darkness. All you have to do is simply turn, and He'll be waiting there. Because while you may not see Him, while you may not be looking for Him, He's following you. He's waiting for you. He's waiting for you to turn, and he's there smiling with open arms, waiting to accept you back. And he'll cover that distance. He's already covered it. He will be there in the bottom of that pit. He will bring light to the darkness and bring you out of that darkness, bring you out of that pit, and bring you back that 1,000 miles so that you don't have to do it on your own. No matter what you've done, no matter how far you've gone, God will be there when you turn. And all you have to do is turn, and he will be there waiting with arms open wide. Guys, I hope you have a great Sunday morning. I hope you enjoyed this life group devotion, and I hope that you are able to watch Pastor Roger and the worship team. Great worship service this morning. Gotta give it up to those guys. It was just so fantastic. So hopefully you can watch the service. Have a great day, and God bless. We'll see you on Wednesday.